This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stockbox interview. Joining us today is Ben Turney, the CEO of Kavango Resources. Well, Happy New Year to you, Ben. It's the first time we're speaking in 2023. How are you?
I'm excellent, thanks, Mark. Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you very much. Well, we're going to be catching up today on a recent piece of news from the KCB. That's, of course, the restarting of drilling on the sixth and final hole. Now, the last time that we spoke, it was a special feature that we did. I think it was back in November, and we were looking really at the whole investment case. We talked about the focus being KCB at the moment, the drilling the rest of the year towards the end of 2022. And you said you'd changed strategy due to the CSAMT survey, and you wanted to really identify the right structure. So you were pre-collar drilling targets with RC, reverse circulation, and then you were going to do diamond. I think you call it tailing the hole with diamond drilling at the end. And the focus really was to prove two rock formations, a contact point. As you said, that was very important. And just picking up on some of the quotes from the RNS recently, you say physical confirmation of the contact's presence will validate the company's use of CSAMT as the KCB exploration tool. So that sounds very nice, validating the company's use of CSAMT, but what does it really mean? I mean, are we talking a discovery here, or what's so good about this?
Well, the major thing that's good about this, of course, Mark, is the how much money it could save an exploration company like ours. If you look at exploration within the KCB, one of the biggest risks for anyone drilling for mineralization is that people don't know how deep the targets are. So typically you have three rock formations that are present within the KCB. The upper sequence is called the Mamuno. Now, not many companies talk about the Mamuno because if the Mamuno is present, that tends to be quite a bad sign for your licenses because the Mamuno can be very thick before you even get to the Dakar. So if you've got Mamuno, that probably means that your economic deposits are out of range. The next formation, the middle formation, is the Dakar formation. And that can be up to 2 kilometers in depth in some areas. Now, again, it can be a very deep formation, and there are things that you can do from surface if you have outcropping to try and identify where within the Dakar sequence you might be. But then underneath the Dakar is the Nguako Pan. That's the bottom sequence of rocks. And the mineralization style in the KCB is controlled at the point where the Dakar and the Dakar and the Nguako Pan meet each other. So this formational contact is extremely important. You then need to have the right ingredients for mineralization to have occurred. So in particular, you're looking for these broken up, what are called brecciated zones. So it's basically fractured rocks through which the superheated fluids would have passed, which were carrying the mineral deposits. And those would have then basically got stuck at this formational contact in what's called a redox boundary. So it's a reduction zone. So in other words, that meant that the metal itself that is trapped in an area within the rocks, and of course hasn't been oxidized because it's basically been sealed by what was once organic matter in these seas that used to exist in this region hundreds of millions of years, or tens of millions of years ago. So overall, it's all about looking for the right structure. And the problem that exploration companies have from surface is you don't know how deep you've got to go until you hit that Nguako Pan, or that Dakar and Nguako Pan contact. The discoveries that there have tended to be quite shallow so far in the KCB. So if you look at T3, which obviously used to be Metal Tiger and Mod Resources, is now Sandfire. If you look at Zone 5 of Khoemacau, these were really pretty much up in the northeast of the belt where there was outcropping at surface, and the indicators and the clues were much more reliable. The further west as you get into the belt, more towards our ground, we are looking at deeper targets because we know that there's a bit of sand cover. It's nothing like down in the KSZ, but we also have, there's unknown, or the sort of big unknown is how deep is the Dakar and how far down do you have to get to this contact point. So the reason that this CSAMT technology is potentially such a game changer is because we believe we're looking at the stratigraphy down to about 4 kilometers. We're looking at zones of resistivity that are stacked on top of each other. And so far, we've managed to test a brecciated zone. We did that in the last hole. And now what we're testing is our interpretation of what we believe could and should hopefully be a Dakar and Nguako Pan contact. Now, if we are able to demonstrate that, We can roll the CSAMT out across our entire license portfolio. It's relatively low cost. And what that should hopefully do in future is substantially de-risk our projects, or what I should say, rather than de-risk, it should enhance our drill targeting in future. So it really could be a massive cost saving for us. It's obviously relatively new technology in terms of the way that we're using it. This has very much been quite a steep learning curve over the last 6 months, as we've obviously been drilling, but we've also deployed the CSAMT. So the two programs have been running in parallel with one another. So we've learned a lot over the last few months, and obviously now this is quite a significant test for us.
Okay, so you're not necessarily looking for a discovery here then. If one comes, that's possibly a big bonus. Is that fair to say really what you're doing is looking to understand the structures and validate the use of CSAMT to then, well, I guess, to help you explore the whole license area, really targeted looking for mineralization?
We are looking for a discovery, Mark. I mean, we're a small company, and despite obviously our recent successful fundraise, we're not in the position of someone like Sandfire who could go out and sort of just look simply for structure. We have to be targeting mineralization as well. Now, of course, on license 082, we've got those very strong soil anomalies, which we haven't yet been able to explain. We've seen some other indicators in some of the other core and the rock samples from the other drilling that we've done in the area. None of this is conclusive at this stage, but we've got a few what we hope are exploration vectors. But right now, no, we are also targeting mineralization as well. We are hoping that there will be, a commercial deposit in the area that we're going for. Of course, we've got to be realistic about our expectations as well. This is high risk exploration drilling. And obviously, our main focus is, while our main focus is the CSAMT test on the Dakar and Guaco Pan contact, of course, we are looking for a discovery as well. So it really is quite an exciting time for the company. And we're really looking forward to seeing what happens with this hole.
Okay, we're talking about what happens with the hole or the holes, and this is, of course, hole 6. There have been 5 other holes done. So what comes next then after the drilling has finished? I guess these will go off for assay to be looked at, that kind of thing. But how does this fit into the bigger picture here with CAV's exploration plans?
So there are two things to consider here. First of all, what's going to be the future of license 082? Our understanding of license 082 has changed massively over the course of the last few months. The original exploration strategy was built on the analysis that we were looking at shallower targets. And of course, that's turned out not to be the case. So we're certainly back to the drawing board in terms of this license. But we're currently working with one of the KCB's leading experts, a guy called Dave Catterall. He's been working with us for the last few months. He has significantly enhanced our understanding of the mineralization model within the belt and also the exploration strategies to deploy. Now, what we're looking at with license 082 is we're starting to work on a theory that further to the southwest in the license, we might be looking at targets that are actually closer to surface. And again, this is based on some of the CSAMT work that we've done. So we certainly expect to do more of that within license 082. But in terms of our primary exploration focus in the KCB, we're going to go over to the license package that's actually we've not put enough attention into so far, which are those 4 licenses that we have on the Namibian border. Now, our neighbour to the east is a company called ENRG Elements. I think what I need to do today is actually put out their recent RNS on our Twitter feed, because they recently flew an airborne survey. And actually, it was while I was in Botswana in August last year, I heard about that survey, and we were able to piggyback off the back of that. The helicopter was in the area. So we flew some limited airborne over the 4 licenses on the Namibian border. We're currently working through the interpretation of those. But the ENRG Elements announcement was very interesting to us, because the formations that they've identified and the target zones they've identified over their ground extends quite deeply into our ground as well. So again, working with Dave's guidance, who's very knowledgeable about the KCB, we're looking at refocusing our efforts, I think, down to the Namibian border. There's more work that we need to do, and we'll certainly be back to drilling here as soon as we can. But realistically, that will be in a few months' time once we've done some more of the work on the ground.
Okay, so we can expect to see some of those plans being drawn up in the next few months, hopefully.
Oh, in the next few weeks, Mark. I mean, the plans, we are drawing the plans up at the moment, and we'll be talking about both what we've done so far and what we can release in terms of current targets, but also what the next steps are. We are also looking at some expansion opportunities within the Kalahari Copper Belts. So nothing yet to report on any of that, but we are in some interesting discussions. And again, because we have this CSAMT, we've got a really fantastic piece of technology to work with. The fact we've been able to prove we can see a brecciated zone, that in itself is actually very valuable. Now, the key thing for us is obviously being able to identify the Guaco Pan Dakar contact, which is extremely important. So yeah, it's all really coming together very nicely, and we're looking forward to what the next steps are.
Okay. And then in terms of getting the results back then from the lab and then proving up this theory, have you got a timeline in mind for that?
Well, in terms of proving up the Dakar and Guaco-Pan contact, I would hope, touch wood, that that's going to be fairly instant. We should be able to
Okay.
see the difference in the rocks. There are certain tests that you can do to confirm. I mean, obviously, a lot's done sort of visually, but there are actual tests that you can make to test the difference between the Dakar and the Guaco-Pan. So we should know that fairly soon. In terms of potential mineralization and vectors to mineralization that might be in the nearby area, that will probably take a little bit of time, and that will be down to the lab testing.
Okay, excellent. Well, just to finish off, Ben, I want to get a couple of points to you just on maybe perhaps the general direction of travel or strategic objectives for 2023. I know in the past we've talked about a year of discovery, and that'll happen when it happens. It's very hard to predict. You've talked about partnering with joint ventures, and I do want to come on to the KSZ briefly at the end. But could you sort of set out the strategic direction or objectives for this year?
So at the moment, one of the things that I did towards the end of last year is I brought in a very close contact of mine, very experienced exploration geologist, ex-Anglo-American. I've known Steve for a few years. I've set up a new technical advisory group within Kavango. Jeremy obviously joined the board. Fantastic. I love working with Jeremy. I mean, he's been such an inspiration within Kavango and has really helped us improve the business already significantly. So the new technical advisory group consists of Steve, Brett and Jeremy, and they're currently working on our new technical strategy for this year. So I hope to be able to report on something about this a bit later on this month. What I've also been doing last year, and I've kept quiet about this up until this point, alongside obviously the financing which I put together and all the work that I did on talking to investors, I've also been looking at potential for expansion for Kavango. So we are looking at sort of other project areas as well. And of course, there's our existing project portfolio that we're working on. So we have a lot to do, both in terms of KCB, KSZ and Dittel. What we recognize, of course, with our portfolio, it is very technically challenging. We got a lot of very useful data last year to help, we hope, point us in the right direction. And you're about to ask me about the KSZ and, of course, that B conductor that we absolutely have to drill.
Yes, I think that's on the mind of lots of investors, the KSZ and that B1 conductor. When are you planning to go back and drill?
So the first thing we need to do is we need to do a bit more work on refining the target. Obviously, when we missed that conductor last year, that hurt us quite badly. It's absolutely imperative that when we next come back and we drill this target, that we hit it and we can explain what this target is. For me, it's not acceptable that Kavango has a target of this size, and at the moment we can't tell anybody whether or not it's a nickel sulfide deposit or some other form of sort of metallic occurrence. So we're going to go back and we are going to drill the B conductor certainly. We're also in the process of looking at some potential JV ideas, and we're also rolling out the technology that we're using in the KSZ. So this combination of TDEM and CSAMT, it is sort of the gold standard for nickel exploration, and we've barely scratched the surface in terms of our overall land package. So we currently have Kaz Lotter and his team with Spectral Geophysics out in the field. They're doing some surveys for us right now. So expect quite a lot more news flow on this once we move past this current part of the campaign in the KCB. I think one of the things I would like to say to our shareholders is I do appreciate that, these things, they take more time than people would like. I understand that. People think, oh, well, you should just simply go and drill the KSZ. It really isn't that simple. We are a small company. We've got a fairly small team. And as obviously we've seen last year, there are improvements we've needed to make within the team, obviously to be able to raise our game. So at the moment, obviously our focus has been on the KCB, but we now are very confident that the new strategy, the new direction we're taking with that should be something that's able to run itself and will hopefully deliver more successful results. And our focus then from the top level will be moving back towards the KSZ towards the end of this month and at the start of next month.
Okay, well, just one final question. I just want to pick up on something you mentioned there about perhaps expanding the portfolio with Kavango. You mentioned that the areas you are technically challenging. We certainly know that the KSZ is a particularly challenging area to operate in. Is this sort of expansion idea, is that a little bit of risk mitigation there, Ben, because concerns about success in the current projects?
I wouldn't say it's risk mitigation. It's more to do with the fact we are now extremely well backed. So we raised £3.5 million in November last year. We've got investors behind us now with deep pockets who've indicated, strong willingness to back Kavango further and back our projects and back our team. We're also in this from our point of view, wonderful situation where, and I shouldn't maybe crow about this too much, but the junior exploration space is on its knees globally because of the shortage of financing, the lack of liquidity. So many of our peers and so many projects just simply cannot get their financing at the moment. So I think we have a window of opportunity with Kavango over the next 6, maybe 12 months, where we've got an opportunity really substantially to upgrade our portfolio. So I wouldn't see it as risk management. It's more about us going out there and actually making metal discoveries. That's what we are in the business of doing. And so far, that's the one thing that Kavango hasn't yet achieved. We know we've got very technically demanding, challenging projects, but there are projects out there which are much lower hanging fruit, which have, quite substantial upside. And we as a team, with everything that we've learned, both in nickel exploration and in copper exploration, with the money that we have behind us, with our access to technology and all the other resources that we have as a listed PLC, we really are in a great position. So this year is really quite exciting for us. I can't wait to start to talk to the market and to our shareholders about what our plans are.
Okay, excellent. So more about seizing an opportunity given the strength of Kavango's position, given the macro environment.
That's exactly what it is, Mark. We are seizing the initiative. And, I do keep banging on about this, but this finance that we raised last year, it puts us in such an incredibly strong position. We've also strengthened our board now that we have Peter Winterby. If you look at what he's achieved with Mashiko, from $100,000 original investment, that privately held company is worth, knocking on the door of £1 billion. So he's got really established track record and incredibly successful. He's got all sorts of contacts, all sorts of ideas as well. He's also bringing into the business. And this is something also that I think, we've lacked a bit. So far on the commercial side, I've been the one who's had to drive everything forward. And with the best will in the world, I'm 43 years old. I've just turned, this is my first CEO role. So actually having Peter now on board, I think that's actually going to be a really, really great influence to us. So yeah, it's absolutely about seizing the opportunity that's in front of us. It's very, very exciting.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ben Turney, the CEO of Kavango Resources, for your time.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.